Sounds like you can hear me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Make sure I get the right screen. Are you able to see the screen that says vendor showcase?
No, we're still seeing you.
All right, well, let's fix that.
I can see your face.
There we go. How about now?
Yes, now.
Perfect.
This is good. Excellent.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started. We don't want to do bios, but a quick introduction for those of you that don't know me. My name's Carl Storms. I'm the technical solutions lead for BIM Track. I'm an architectural technologist by trade and have done a little bit of everything in the industry in my 20 plus years there. You can see it there on the screen. I won't belabor the point. And really, it's always awkward to talk about yourself. That's why I fill this slide with as much information as possible. So tonight we're going to talk about issue tracking platforms, but more specifically, how to sort of think outside the box when you're working with issue tracking platforms. But I want to tailor the expectations for tonight's presentation. So I'm going to start with what a lot of us probably start with in the morning, which is your morning coffee. So where I live, just around the corner is a Starbucks. So when I go to the Starbucks, I get what I like and I'm good to go. But as I'm sure we're all aware, Starbucks isn't the only place where you can get a cup of coffee. So whether you're making it at home with a Keurig or you've got a fancy espresso machine, for me up here in Canada, you have to go to Tim Hortons. But as you can see, lots of options for what you might want when it comes to your morning coffee. Well, when we talk about issue tracking, of course, I'm going to be a little biased towards BIM Track, but it's not the only horse in the race, as the case may go. So lots of other ways with which you can track your issues, whether it's a similar platform to BIM Track, or whether it's, checklists and emails and Cabana boards and, any sort of markups that you want. There's lots of ways with which you can use the platform to make sure you get what you need done in a timely fashion. So to give you a little bit of an overview of what a platform like this might look like, we start with a current workflow. So if we're working with a current workflow where we don't have a platform to help us track our issues, and whenever I say issues, I always do sort of air quotes because, as we'll see, issues really can be anything that you want them to be. The idea here is that someone has a file, whether it's a Revit file, a Tekla file, you name it. We have this file. It's usually created by the BIM coordinator. That gets passed on to all the people that are working in the project. As you can see, engineers, architects, you name it. Stuff happens. People make notes. They put it in emails. They put it on slides. They put it in PDFs, you name it. Eventually, we hope that information makes it to the person that's actually going to be dealing with those issues. And we sort of rinse and repeat as we go through there. Not the ideal workflow. So we can do better. So the improved workflow looks like we have, I'm not going to say a CDE, not necessarily a common data environment, but there's something in the middle that allows us to find these problems, these issues, these tasks that need to be completed, and we're able to assign them to somebody. It's the act of actually assigning that gives us the accountability that allows us to make sure that we don't forget that sticky note, that we don't forget to validate that that solution actually works. And we make sure that that all gets done and we're able to have that in one sort of central place. Now, this is kind of the meat of what we want to talk about tonight. And it's more than just issues. And I've already said it once, the fact that when we're working with a platform like BIM Track, issues can be anything that you want. So we're going to take a look at how we can create tasks. So it doesn't have to be that there's a clash or something wrong. Perhaps a task is something positive. Maybe we want to look at information. So there's project information that we want to share with the entire team, and we want to to be stored in a location that's easy to find, whether it's on the web or in our authoring platform. Maybe we're doing drawing review, design review, rather than getting out the red pen and a roll of paper or using a platform to mark up our PDFs. We want to be able to do this in some place where it's actionable. News. The idea here is that we have something going on during the project and we want to do a push warning or alert to everybody in the project to let them know whatever this exciting news, good, bad, whatever the case may be is, and we want everybody to be able to see it, again, in the platform that they're in. Solutions. Now this one's a little bit different, again, thinking outside of the box, but the idea here is that when you're working through a project, as you're working through it, you're going to find things that work and things that don't work. So we have these things that I call solutions, and in brackets you see lessons learned, but the idea that we've tried a workflow, we've tried a process, we've tried something, and it worked, and we want to remember it, or it didn't work, and we don't want to forget it. So that's my idea behind using solutions. The ever popular to-do list. As we're walking through our day-to-day tasks, it's always nice to have a list of what we're doing, and it's even nicer at the end of the day when we've checked all those boxes and that list is empty. People always look at me a little bit funny when I say a don't do list, or in this case, non-issues. The idea here is, what if there's something that's happened within a project and we want to make sure that somebody doesn't advance the work in that particular area because it's been put on hold by the city, we have to get an inspector's report, maybe we have to get a structural review, whatever the case may be, there's something that we don't want work to progress on. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that we don't want to move forward in that area. And for my friends that are in facilities management and operations, when it comes to handover, maybe we want to know when something has been installed. So we want to just very simply be able to say whether or not a piece of equipment has been installed or not installed, and a very simple workflow. And of course, these are just a few options that I'm going to look at here tonight. There's many, many more when, of course, you think outside of the box. So I'm going to jump into a demonstration here. So let me go ahead and fire up the BIM Track. All right. So what you should see on the screen here is the BIM Track hub. And I think it's worth going through a typical issue tracking workflow first before we hop into sort of the out of the box thinking ideas, which we'll get into. Here inside of BIM Track, we have a hub. I'm currently part of 11 projects. You get unlimited projects inside of a hub, and that means that there could be 100 projects inside of here. I only see the ones that I have access to. If I want to hop right into my project, so I'm going to start with this car dealership project here. I pick on the project and we kick off inside of our dashboard. We've all seen dashboards. It essentially gives me information about current issues, maybe a little mountain view that shows us action and activity that's happened over the course of the week or month, I should say, and then issues relating to the project and to me. So very quick, very specific to me personally, gives me a really quick snapshot of what's going on. The issues themselves, the bread and butter, as the case may be, I click on the Issues tab, and I have access to all of the issues. Now, in this case, we see we've got 88. I might not want to stroll through them all, or scroll through them all, I should say. So we can always go up to our little search icon and look for a specific one, whether it's by issue number or by name. And then it takes us directly to that issue. What we can see here is what a typical issue would look like. So there's going to be viewpoints or images, screenshots, if you will. And if I hover over this, you'll see that it gives us two pieces of information, where it came from, so the web viewer, as well as the X, Y, and Z coordinates. Those X, Y, and Z coordinates are the secret sauce to working inside of this platform. What it allows you to do is to make sure, no matter which platform you're working in, Revit, Navisworks, Tekla, the web viewer, that all of the models that are part of your federated model are using that same coordinate system. If you're working inside of Revit, the shared coordinate system will do this just nicely. If you're working with a platform or a project, I should say, that doesn't incorporate Revit, you just need to make sure that when you put together that federated model that everyone's working on that same coordinate system. I know this very well from my time in the field, that saying everyone work on the same coordinate system versus everyone actually working on the same coordinate system isn't necessarily the same thing, and it's sometimes a little easier said than done. But once we got that in place, that makes this process so much easier, because when we click take me to location in the model, it's going to take us to this right place all the time, no matter where we are. We have the ability to have comments. So we have sort of an ongoing stream of consciousness for what's happened with this particular issue. We have the ability to @ people or teams, which essentially just means that I've assigned this issue to the engineer, but if I want to get the architect's input, I could @ the architect. I could also @ teams, which are just groups of people that you want to get notified at the same time. During my demonstrations, I typically use disciplines, so architectural, mechanical, structural, but again, they can be anything that you want. We also have the ability to add attachments. So in this particular issue, the header's the wrong size. There's a little bit of a spec sheet that allows me to put that information in relative terms. Similar to unlimited projects, we have unlimited storage in the platform. So say, for example, you did a job site walk and you've got a 2-minute video of the job site. Perhaps you want to share the actual Revit file or the Navisworks file or some other piece of information. Pretty much any file format is supported to upload here. Anyone that has access to that issue has access to what's been attached. And then when it comes time to review the PDF or watch the video, I download it on my device of choice and watch it in the proper app for watching a video or reading a PDF or what have you. A non-delete ongoing history. So everything that's happened from the beginning of time with this issue is available here, even if something's been deleted or archived or changed. In this particular issue, we have our Procore integration. I'll touch on integrations in a bit, but again, allows you to push information into Procore. We're not always going to be looking at a specific issue. So that also means that we have the ability to filter, and filtering will come in very handy when we look at thinking outside the box at some of the other workflows we talked about earlier on in the PowerPoint. So we have the ability to click filter, and any of these categories we can just select on and filter by any of the information that's within them, whether it's one or multi. So if I go down to discipline and I say I only want to see architectural, and let's go with my mechanical issues, and then I hit apply, I'm now down to 35 because I'm just seeing those issues. All of these areas here with this information, you can set that up based on your project. So when you're setting up a project, you can see I have project templates here. You can make sure that the information is relevant to your particular project. Well, that was fairly painless to go through and quickly filter out that information. There's going to be certain pieces of information that you're going to want to filter by all the time. So we have the ability to have quick filters. Whether that's something we want to share with the entire team, as we see over here, or ones that we want to keep personal for yourself, both are applicable. So if I select top architectural issues, you can see that I now have just 6 issues. They're sorted in order of criticality. So red is critical, yellow is high, and then I have nothing other than that because I'm only looking for the most critical. So we really have the ability to sort of slice and dice and find the information that I want very quickly inside of the platform. I mentioned a little bit about the integration, so I'll show that now before I forget. Essentially, we have the ability to tie directly into authoring tools and viewing tools. So we're going to take a look at Revit and Navisworks quickly tonight, but other tools as well. Integrations that might not necessarily be an add-in, Power BI, Cintu Cloud is a fairly new one. We talked about Imaginet Clarity. We have an integration with them. VREX is a AR platform. And of course, we also have the BIM collaboration format or BCF capabilities where we can export the BCF. The BCF is where all the metadata for the issues is stored, and we can put that into another type of platform that supports that format and share the information back and forth. And all of this sits on top of an open API. So if something you would like to work with isn't available here, the API is open for you or someone you know with a little bit of coding chops to make that work. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump inside of Navisworks. There we go. So here inside of Navisworks, you can see I've got the little car dealership that we're using for our example. You can see I've got my add-in. The add-in, there's 7 products that we tie into. We just saw them there on the integration page. I'm already logged in, but essentially you can be part of many hubs. So you choose the particular hub you want to access. Inside of each hub, you can have multiple projects. So choose the proper project. And then all of the issues that you have access to will be available to you in our pretty little Christmas tree colored area right here. We also have the ability to show all of the issues with these little balloons. Some of them are viewpoints, some of them are clashes that have specifically been created as a clash. If we use some of these filters, and you can see I'm logged in as Alice here, I select top architectural issues, I hit apply. You can see that our little bubbles are following that same criteria, so there's not as many of them there. Now, whether I click view and model here or over here, it's going to take me directly to that location inside of the model. So you can see I was able to very quickly click on that and go directly to this particular issue. I could also hit view and edit and see all of the information that has taken place over the course of time within this issue. Any attachments, any history, all of that is available to me here inside of the issue. If I pop back in here, and I'm just going to quickly turn off my little bubbles just to clean up the screen a little bit. What if we wanted to create an issue? And I'm going to show you this inside of Navisworks, but whether we were using Revit Civil 3D, Tekla, the process is basically the same. And the only thing that's really different about this add-in is how I can create issues. And I like showing this in Navisworks because I can talk about clashes to issues. Well, we can only do Clash Detective inside of Navisworks, so I'm not going to have that functionality when I open up Revit. So if I navigate around, let's say that I just want to move this car a little closer to dealer, perhaps maybe right here. So I can create an issue on it. So I come over here, I create an issue. And the big difference between creating an issue and localized issue is when I create an issue, gives me an overall image. When I localize an issue, which is what I'm going to do here, it gives me the extra step of putting a little black dot exactly where I want the issue to be. Other than that, they're exactly the same. So I'm going to change the sign. I could add more information, move sign. We also have the ability, you can see it tells me this was created inside of Navisworks, that I can add additional information, or I can mark up that screenshot or image that I just took. So what it's going to do is it's going to open whatever your default image editor is. And for me on my PC, it's lovely Microsoft Paint. So now that I'm in here, I can choose however I want to do my markup. Move to here, add in some text. Save it, and then close out. And now if you'll see, we've added that information. And as soon as I sync this, everyone will have access to that. The real power of issue tracking, whatever you're calling an issue, is the fact that we have the ability to have accountability. We can assign this to somebody. So someone has to take care of this when we give it to them. So it's the outside of the building. I'm going to give it to Bob the builder. I can assign a priority. I can assign a zone. And I mentioned earlier that all of these drop downs are configurable for your project, whatever discipline we want to do. So I want the architecture and the contractor in the loop here. Due date, it'll set up a default due date. I believe mine is 5 days, but you can choose whatever due date you want. Notifications like adding a CC on an email. So while this issue is being sent to Bob, I want to make sure that the construction team or the contractor team is aware of it as well. What type of information are we sharing? It's going to be an issue. And you may have noticed with a keen eye that a few of these have stars or asterisks beside them. Those are things that are mandatory, information that I must fill out when I'm creating an issue. Again, you can set those up as need be when you're putting together your project. What's the status? Phase. Confidentiality is a good one. You're able to choose who can see this issue, whether it's a matter of privacy or more commonly, a matter of just not filling the structural engineer's inbox with issues that have nothing to do with structure. So in this case, I'm going to say, I just want the architectural team and the construction team to be aware of this, and then I can publish it. Before I publish, the one last thing that I'll point out is custom attribute, which I've cheekily named custom attribute. But basically, with all of these configurable categories, if the information that you want to track isn't available, you can create up to 3 custom attributes and fill it with all the information that you need, whether it's a costing code, information, whatever the case may be, so that you have that information tracked. When all of that's done, you simply hit publish, and it's going to create that issue. And you'll see nothing appeared here because when I created that issue, I created it as a medium, not a high or a critical. So if I go back into my filters and I say I just want it to be my no clashes, so that's everything else, you'll now see that right up here at the top, I now have that new sign issue. And whether we're working inside of Navisworks or any other platforms, that's the same way you would create an issue anywhere inside of BIM Track. Now for a couple of things a little more specific to working inside of Navisworks. A lot of times before we jump hot and heavy into clash detection, or clash detective, as we like to call it in Navisworks, we might get some low-hanging fruit by just reviewing the model and finding some stuff and creating some viewpoints. So this is supposed to be a round column. And if I go into my review here, nope. I'll get it eventually. I want to. Oh, sorry, it's right in front of my eyes. I wanted to make sure the comments were on. Just to notice that there are comments here inside of Navisworks. Side door, notice that there are markups inside of Navisworks as well as comments, rooftop units in the wrong spot, and this random pipe that's in an area where it shouldn't be in. So these are things that all need to be addressed. So if I go over into my location, views to issues, I can select on this and I can say, okay, this is the information that I want to share. And I can go through and change whichever pieces of information I want, take those views, include the markups and the comments. You can see that it retains the same information from what I just created, so I can change it if needed, hit publish, and it pushes that information into the system. Now I'm going to cancel it here because I've already created these. You can see side door, rooftop, outside pipe, column issue. And if I click here on the side door, you can see the comments came through from within Navisworks. And we also have the markups from in Navisworks. So we have some people that like to keep the content inside of Navisworks. If I update that particular Navisworks viewpoint and I resync it, it's going to push the updates, including any markups in the within that back into BIM Track. And of course, very quickly, the clash detection, we can create issues from clash detection. If you can see inside of here, I've already got a bunch of clash tests. If I select on 105, you can see there's 95 clashes here. But if I take a look at this and I run it because it's been a while, you can see we're now at 234, 139 that are new. So I need to action these 139 issues. Whether it's 139 issues or 10,000, if we just randomly clash the architectural against the structural, it doesn't make sense to just arbitrarily create 10,000 issues. We want to be a little more specific when we're doing that. And one of the ways that we help with that is we include a clash grouping tool with BIM Track. So essentially what this means is that I have the ability, after I've run that, to open the clash grouper, select that same clash test, and now that I've selected that clash test, I have the ability to choose from up to 7 different categories for how I want to slice and dice. So let's say I want to slice and dice by level and by grid intersection. I go ahead and say group. And if I hop back into my clash detective, you can see I'm now down to 36 new groups. And the groups, if I open this up a little bit, are named by level and grid intersection. So this one has 3 clashes, this one has 4, this one has 2. Actual output may vary, but now when I go into my clashes to issues, I can select that same clash test, and now I can create 36 issues based on those groups. And I have the ability to only push through the proper information. So I only care about the 36 new issues. I'm not concerned about the 79 resolved. So I select new. I can also choose which pieces of information come from Navisworks and get pushed into BIM Track. And you can pick and choose what you want. I always like to make sure that I've got quick properties included, because then I can choose with the quick properties which Navisworks information I push through. I go ahead and hit publish. And again, I've already done this. And you'll now see that it's created these 36 issues. And if I scroll down, you'll see that we have some that say 1 and 4, 1 and 3, 1 and 10. What that means is that the group contain 9 is the area where the clashes happen. So it's, and then each one after that is an individual clash. And if I open up that particular clash, you'll see here's the information from each one of those clashes included inside of here. So we have the ability to share all of that information. The other thing that comes into play is once we've done that, you'll see right here this existing BIM Track issues. If I go ahead, come back next week, I rerun that clash test, and instead of 36 new, it's now 10 active and 26 approved, and my same 79 resolved. But when I push this through, because as soon as something is marked as approved or resolved, it's going to update the status here inside of the workflow. So it's going to mark it closed, and I don't have to do that. So if we automatically create issues based off of the clashes to issues, we can automatically close them based on clashes to issues. I'm just going to quickly hop into Revit to finish this off, and then we're going to take a look at some of those out-of-the-box workflows in a different project. So if I hop here into the Revit project, you can see I'm logged in as the engineer. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to filter. And this is actually going to touch on one of the first things that we talked about, or one of the things we talked about. I think it was halfway down the list. But what about a to-do list? So if I come in here to my filter, you can see that I've got the shared filters. I also have one that's personal to the engineer, Erica. So if I select this and say apply, this is now Erica's to-do list. And what does the to-do list filter in this case show? Is it shows issues that are assigned to Erica. So they're ones that are assigned to her directly. It also shows them in order of criticality. So most critical, high, medium, and low. So now that we're here, and because we're inside of Revit, an authoring tool, we can actually start working on these issues to fix the problems. So if I go into View and Model, I click View and Model, and just like we saw in Navisworks, it's going to take me directly to the location where it needs to be fixed. So now if I look here, I have a pretty good idea what's wrong just looking at the model. But if I'm not sure, I can say Edit and View, and again, we have all the information available to me here. But I know that that's the wrong size header, so I'm going to go ahead and fix it. So I select on this beam, and I see that it's a 12 by 16. So then I go ahead and select on this beam and I can change it. So now I just fix it. I'm just going to action the item. I didn't have to leave or do anything like that. I go ahead and select it and it changes it. I've fixed that issue. So I can go back into view edit. I can take a little screenshot to validate what it was that I did to fix the problem. Add in a little comment, fixed with W12 by 16 header. And then I post it. Probably the most important part of the workflow is over here with status. So it says it was in progress. What I want to do now is I want to let everyone know that we fixed this. So I come down here and I can choose the proper status. Now you'll notice that I do not have access as the engineer to close this issue. And this is a workflow that we always recommend. So what we do is we keep that closed status only for the BIM manager, the VDC manager, the project coordinator. We only have a couple people that can do that. And we do that for a couple reasons. One, we want to make sure that the solution is in fact the right solution for this project. Maybe because this is a car dealership, that needed to be higher because SUVs are getting bigger and bigger and we need to drive down that corridor. So, well, this is technically a fix. It's not the right fix for this particular project. Or perhaps we just want to make sure that people aren't marking things closed because they're busy and maybe they didn't put full attention into it. However you look at it, the idea is that there's a second set of eyes that validates that when it says closed. And now that I've done that, I can say publish. And it's going to publish that issue. And you'll notice that magically, I have one less thing on my to-do list. And the reason it worked that way is because I have this filter set up to only show me things that are statuses other than fixed or closed. So as soon as something is marked fixed or closed, it disappears from my to-do list. I didn't have to leave my platform. I spend all my time modeling away in Revit. I didn't have to go to a different platform. I just continue working in the platform that I know and do what I need to do. And at the end of the day, if my to-do list is empty, I give myself a pat in the back and I'm really excited because I got nothing else left to do. I know that's not usually the case because it can fill up during the day as well, but that kind of gives you the quick idea of how things push through. One of the sort of last things that I'll show you here before we start looking at out of the box ideas is that if we want to review our content inside of the BIM Track web viewer, we work with IFCs. So here inside of Revit, we have the ability to actually publish the Revit files as an IFC to review in the viewer. So if I go ahead and select on this, I can choose the view or views I want to publish as a model. It uses the out-of-the-box IFC exporter from Revit. So I select my tool to export. You'll see that it revisions it. Again, with that unlimited storage, whether it's the first IFC or the 20th IFC, all of them are available and all of them are in order. We also have the ability to export the sheets from Revit as PDFs. So this means that we have the ability to do 2D and 3D workflows in the platform. So we select the sheets we want to export. I'm just going to select them all, say OK, and then we publish. As we're walking through this workflow and as the project gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we may have several models that we're publishing and maybe 100 sheets. This can take some time. So we have the ability to schedule this. So if I hit the schedule button, I give it a name, structural steel. So every Sunday night at 11 p.m., just before people come in on Monday, hit save, and we're set. So now every Sunday at 11 o'clock at night, it's going to publish the specific views as IFC models, and it's going to publish the sheets. The only caveat to that is the computer that you scheduled on physically has to be powered on. Revit doesn't have to be on, the internet doesn't have to, none of that stuff has to be powered on. The computer just has to have power so that the program can kick off and do everything it needs in the background. So we were able to push all that through. And if I quickly hop back into the web interface, and now you can see if I go back into my regular issues, and I'm going to clear all of my issues, you can see that we again have access to that new issue that came into play, and we have access to everything in there. And if I quickly go into my viewer, we pull into this web viewer here. You can see that we have revision 6. If I scroll down to my structural steel, revision 15. If I manage the revisions, you can see we have access to all of them as IFCs that we can download. By default, everything's turned off just to manage power on the back end. But if I turn on my architectural file, we can see the model, and we've got, you know, a web viewer similar to many other web viewers out there. We can do measurements, walkthroughs, clip boxes, you kind of name it. I can turn on the structural model. Similar to those of you that are familiar with working in Navisworks, we can add profiles. So you can see that all of my floors and ceilings come in at transparent, so I can easily see through them. All of my structural steel comes in as purple, so I can tell right away where the structural steel is. We also have the ability to do 2D workflows. So if I go into my sheets, and you can see that we can bring in sheets that aren't just from Revit. So I have a 280-page train manual in here. I also have my structural and my architectural plans, so we can do 2D workflows. One of the cool things is that if we happen to have the 3D model on like I do, and we turn on a 2D sheet at the same time, we get hyper modeling, 2D, 3D overlay, maybe for a better term. So if I close out of this, you can see that I've got the sheet, and only for a little bit of green does it give it away that there's something a little different than just standard 2D in here. So if I go into my clipping plane, go to my top, and then scroll down, you now see that I have access to the model, and I can move and slice through it as needed. But we have access to the 3D information, as well as, in this case, the 2D structural information, the grid lines, the tags, whatever it is that you need to do, we can do from here. And of course, we also have the ability to create issues directly from here in this 2D or 3D or this hybrid view by simply just choosing the type of issue we want to create. Take the screenshot, and then we can create the issue information, do our markups, and all of that that's required right here. The last thing that I'll show real quickly before we talk about the other ways that we workflow on a different project is, of course, all of that stuff that we talked about when we're creating issues leads back to the ability to have metrics. So please excuse my demo project metrics. They're not the greatest. It takes a long time to get to an issue, but then we close it really quick. But as you can see, we can see who the issues are assigned to. We can also choose our dessert of choice, whether it's pie or donut. Maybe I want to see disciplines. So now I see all the different disciplines and the information inside of the project. I want to take a look at the architectural issues. So I click on that, and now it sorts down to all the architectural issues, who they're assigned to. Let's look at priority. So now we can see our priorities. I want to look at these high issues. And now I can see that there's 4 that are assigned to Alice and 1 that's assigned to Erica. I've been able to dig down till I get to the information where I can now action it. I know Alice is leaving on vacation tomorrow. So do I give her an extra week? Do I extend the deadline? Do I assign them to somebody else? A combination of both. But I've been able to sort down to the information that's relevant. I can now action that and move forward. And of course, when it comes to coordination meetings, we want to do that in report form. So we can do the same thing. I can select on reports. All of these that we saw before, I can slice and dice the reports the way that I want. I can create templates so I can use them. So let's go with our overdue issues. I can schedule reports the same way that we scheduled the publishing for the IFC models. So if I select schedule reports, give it a name, weekly on Thursday at 5, just before that coordination meeting. I can also email this PDF report to teams, so the architectural and the contractor team, and I schedule it. So just like the export of the IFCs, every Thursday at 5:08 p.m., it's going to run the report. So it's not waiting. It waits until just before, runs the report, and then sends a PDF of that information to everyone that's required. What does that look like? Well, if I hit print, it gives us 2 options. So we can take a look at the PDF, which I'm not going to do right now, or we can take a look at the web-based. And as you can see, everything on here is live. All of the different possibilities are here. I didn't bother turning any off because I like to show them all for the demonstration. But then as we get down, we start looking at, the crux of an actual issue. So all the information about the issue, someone put in the actual image of what it should look like. There's some comments, a PDF, all of that information is available. And then if I actually click on the link, it takes me directly to that issue. So that means that I have the ability to action it when I'm inside of that coordination meeting, and I can do whatever I want. One of the things that a lot of our users will do is they will use a status. I call it coordination meeting. You may call it something different. And they empower all of their users the ability to use this specific status. And so that report that we saw that we send out, we would send out a coordination meeting report, which is just the things that have been marked coordination meeting. Over the course of the week, all the users say, okay, this is something that has to be addressed in the coordination meeting, so therefore I mark it coordination meeting. And that way, when you're getting into these meetings, you're not spending time passing around thumb drives. You're dealing with issues that happen that need to be addressed because the people working on the project said they need to be addressed. So you're no longer spending your coordination time in a coordination meeting, coordinating the meeting. You're getting right to the bits and pieces that need to be done. Whew. All right. I'm going to take a quick drink. So that's a lot of sort of the typical workflows that we would see when you're working in BIM Track or really any issue tracking platform. Some of the other things that I'd like to touch on here tonight is looking at outside of the box and some of those different things that we can do. So an issue doesn't have to mean that there's something wrong. There's a hole in the drywall, there's a drawing missing on a drawing sheet. It doesn't have to be that. It can be anything that you want it to be, that you want it to be assigned to somebody, you want it to be visible to certain people, you want access to it anywhere. So we can set that up and do whatever it is we want to do. So to take a look at this, I'm going to switch my project, and I have one called tasks because, well, why not? So when I'm swapping out this particular issue, what this allows me to do is take a look at all of my issues in this project. And I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way through. So we already saw some pretty standard issues that came into place. So just a standard issue that we might make any day that comes into play. One of the other ones that I talked about is you can see these lovely fuchsia things, issues. I call them information. So if I click on this one, the founder's tree. So working on this project, this particular project has this tree that's been since the beginning of the institution. We're going to say this is a school. And so we wanted to share the story of this founder's tree with everyone in the project. So we add a little note. Someone takes a picture of what the tree looks like. We go to attachments. There's a PDF that tells a story about the founder's tree. You can see we've got different views from within the model. But the idea is that we had the ability to put this information in there that everyone can see it. One of the things that I did, if I go into my project settings, is I took advantage in this project of some of those custom attributes that I talked about earlier. So I created some called to-do list, I created some called tasks, and I created some called information. So if I go down and look at information, you can see we've got general and project. Again, you could add more colors, whatever works for you. So if I go back into that information issue, I could filter by this. So I go into my filter, and I'm going to filter by type. And you can see I also have an info type. So I select, apply, and now you see I've got these 3 issues that are in place. So the founder's tree, information contact list, project specs. So if I click on this one, it gives me the ability to see the contact list for this project. And if I hop back into Revit, and now I'm in this project, the tasks project. Again, if I go back to filter, and where did it go here? I want to filter by task. And you can see I've got a lot more types that I've created for this particular project. So I say info and I apply. Again, you can see we've got those lists in there. So I'm working in a project and I need to call Bob. Well, I can, in here inside of Revit or Navisworks, whatever I'm using, I can go to that contact list and I can go ahead and download the Excel file and do what I need to do with it. Someone was smart enough to take an actual picture of that Excel spreadsheet because we can view images inside of the platform. And now I can scroll through and find whoever I need to, and I can create that list. So it's not issue related at all, but it's helpful to be able to do that. And I'm just going to step outside of the realm of the presentation for a second to show you something else really cool. You'll see here that it says the contact list provided by Mockaroo.com. It's a random data generator engine. And as long as you have less than 1,000 rows of random data, you can pretty much create anything. So I created that contact list with completely fictional information just by going to this website and filling it out. And then it brought out that information. Let's go to the right project. There we go. And then it printed out this list of information. So nothing to do with this presentation, but if you ever give presentations or need just data to fill out a spec sheet or test something, Mockaroo.com, great place to go. So that kind of gives you the idea of creating that type of information. The other thing that I like to do is I like to make sure that I have a little header and I have the ability to put the information inside of here. And one of the things we do, if I hop back to my other project, sorry for hopping back and forth to projects, I just know this one has what I want to talk about in it. One of the ones that's almost always in all of my projects under information is my BIM execution plan. So I have my little information title, I go to my attachment, and I have the most recent version of the BIM execution plan. And again, if we want to get a little bit creative, we can add images. So if I say add image, I just happen to have the cover pages of that. So I've got the context, cover page. So I post that. And so now I can click on that cover page and I have access to that. So I can see and I know that I can, the information that I need is available to me in that execution plan. I can download it and move on. One of the most common things that I run into when I'm working with outside of the box thinking is the idea of being able to do review. So if I want to do a drawing review inside of the process, the idea here is that we want to take a look at what's going on. So if I go back into my tasks project, I'm going to go to my viewer and I'm just going to look at the 2D plans. So I'm just going to quickly go into my 2D sheets, open up my floor plan, and take a look at it. Now, I'm going to play the role of the associate at an architecture firm, and I want to make sure that this information gets assigned to someone that's going to do whatever they want to do. So think of it as replacing what you might do for your Monday morning stand-up meetings where you're, drawing pictures and making information on PDFs or what have you. So I'm going to go ahead and create an issue. Create an issue. One of the things that I like to do when I'm doing stuff that's not a typical issue is I like to give it a header. So design, or actually I think I call it drawing review. Drawing review north wing. Add description, status. So this is actually going to be a task. So I'm going to say it's open. It is a drawing review task. And again, these are all things that I've put together, put this in place. It's going to be the architectural discipline, and I'm going to assign it to Alice. And of course, I can show the particular area where I want it to go. I basically wanted her to spend her week designing this area. Please review and design this area. Keep me in the loop. Spell this evening. So now we've created that issue. And if I hop back into Revit, close out of my issues, sync just to make sure, you can now see that I have this new request. I need to do the work inside of here, and I can make those changes. And you can basically see how the process would go back and forth from there. And to show you, we have a few drawing review processes that have sort of happened already. So if I go to this cafeteria one, click into place, you can see, we need to make some changes. They've added some comments about, this is the type of furniture we're going to use. We've done some layouts. We've had some options put into place. So do you like it with this many tables? Actually, maybe we should go to the square tables. But all of the information is happening real time, or as real as time as can be when you hit the sync button inside of the platform. So the associate can be working inside of Revit, Navisworks, or in the web app. Alice is working inside of her platform of choice, and she's putting these information together as she's working her way through to make sure that all of that information puts in place. So what this allows us to do is to make sure that we've got the information that we need. Now, if I come back into here, because I didn't want to close out of here, one of the other things that we can do, and for this, I want to just sort of point out that I'm logged in as Alice here. And if I go back to my quick filters and look at my to-do list for Alice, hit apply, you can see it's got my to-do list in order. But essentially what happened here is, as part of the project of doing the south wing, Alice was designed her own to-do list. So if I select on this issue, I bring in the image. Basically what Alice did was she created her own to-do list. She went through, she added a markup on the first two rooms in the south wing, gave herself a deadline of 1 day, added as a task, and created that and published it. And then as she goes through each next set of rooms, the next two rooms, added a couple more days. The next couple of rooms, she added a few more days after that. And then the final, oops, I need to close out of this. The final little bit, again, she added the last 2 days. And the idea is that she's giving herself a to-do list. The reason why I point this out specifically is that Alice created this do list for herself. And if I come into here and I edit the do list, you can see it's assigned to Alice. And the confidentiality was placed to Team Alice. She's created her own team. So the only person that sees these issues or these to-do list tasks is Alice herself. And even if I hop back into here, you can see I'm logged in as Carl, the administrator for this project. I go back to the issues. You can see that it goes from 11 to 15. That's because even though I'm the administrator, those issues were assigned specifically to Alice and was created by Alice. So her to-do list doesn't affect anyone else on the project. And as she's going through and creating her to-do list and marking things off and checking things off, she has the ability to make sure that all of that information gets done. And you can see that those 12, 13, 14, and 15 were in response to this original task that was assigned that says, hey, Alice, we need to do this south wing. And then she took her own time to slice and dice and make it her own way to set things in place. I'm going to go through a couple more things here, and then I'll open it up for questions. We talked about news. So if I hop back into here, you can see I've got this one news item. I've got the big bold news icon. It's in red because it's critical. And you can see that there was some flooding on the site and the site was closed. So we created this news item. We pushed it out, and no matter which platform we're in, you can see if I go through and sort. There's my news item down there on the, that's not what I wanted, but you can see we've got that. We can put into place our to-do list. We have access, there we go, to that information no matter where we are, to get to it right away and to see that information that's come into place. We also had the idea of, there we go, design change. We talked about the idea of don't do's. We don't want somebody to work on something. So if I view this issue here, you can see what it is there's been a design change, and we say that the client's making decisions on this area, and we won't know for 2 weeks, so we don't want the structural to do any work on this. And so we basically put that information in there, and then we have the back and forth. Basically, the engineer says, okay, we understand, we're not going to touch it until you tell us to put it in place. So the idea is that we're showing this as information where we want somebody not to do something. We want somebody to take their time and sort of step back from the process. And once it gets resolved, we'll place a meeting. So let's say right now, I can say, hey, Erica, there we go. This is now good to go. Please continue. I can post, progress, publish, and now Erica will get a notification that says that that's been updated, and she can move forward with that. And if I hop back into, actually I don't have Erica installed in any of my ones now. It's all just Alice. But if I hop back into here, you'll see that that's published through, just to show you inside of here. And if I go into my list, you can see that it's been published through and put into place. All right, I'm going to stop now. Otherwise, I could talk all night. And I'm going to open it up for any questions about anything you saw, didn't see, or want to discuss. Did anyone have any questions? I did notice one came through on the chat. Rick D asked if BIM Track syncs with Worksharing and Revit. It does not. So one of the things with BIM Track is it doesn't get into your workflow. So it's not like BIM 360 Design where you're storing your active models inside of there. What it allows you to do is to assign issues and view those issues or those things that need to be addressed inside of your platform, say like Revit, but it doesn't actually store your files inside of there. And we do have a lot of people that will use something like BIM 360 Docs or BIM 360 Design for the common data environment and for the work sharing, and then they'll use this to track the issues. Did anyone else have any other questions? I see Matthew came through and asked about cost. Cost is a great question. And unfortunately, as the technical guy, they don't tell me nothing. But you can certainly head over to the BIM Track website, and one of the sales guys would be more than happy to help you out. Typically speaking, I think it starts around $20 a user a month. But again, as a technical guy, don't quote me on that.
Carl, thank you for the presentation. It was great. I got a question.
Sure.
Is it possible to create 2D views that you can measure?
Yes. So two things happen. So if I go into the viewer, the easiest way is that if we're working with the IFC model, is that when we turn on the model, we simply just do a top-down view and measure stuff. When we're working with, let me get into the other model because I have better models in here. When we're working with actual plans, when we bring the plans in, the plans come from Revit, come to scale, so 1-to-1. So you can use the ability to measure inside of them. Let me open up a plan here. This is why you don't upload 280 pages of the train manual. There we go. Oh. So we can use the measuring tool. And it gives us a measurement. And again, the reason it works with this, because this was exported from Revit, so it comes in at 1-to-1. If you're bringing in a PDF from somewhere else, so somebody just sends you a PDF and you want to be part of this, there is a mechanism within it, and I won't go into all the nitty-gritty details, but where you can stretch it, basically make it bigger, make it smaller, to calibrate it to be about 1-to-1. And the reason why I say about 1-to-1 is because it's a visual check. So if you're using things like grid lines and stuff, you can get it pretty close. But just like on the drawings where we say don't scale the drawings, we say don't build from these prints. But to make a short answer long, yes, you can measure from the blueprints.
So everything basically has to be in the same insertion, has to have the same insertion point?
Correct. And again, when we're working with, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I cut you off.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and that's that beauty of working with Revit is that if you're publishing the sheets, that takes care of itself. And if you're working with the shared coordinates inside of Revit so that all the people using Revit are using that same coordinate system, again, it takes care of itself. If you're working outside of that, it's part of the BIM coordination process to make sure the federated model has everybody using that same coordination system in advance of putting it inside of BIM Track.
Yeah, just sometimes it happens that the coordination model, federated model, has one insertion point, and the architectural file has a different insertion point, and the structural model has yet another one. So the designers may not always work in the same coordinate system between themselves.
Yes, and that can cause issues, in which case then you would have to have a master model. So whether that's one Revit model where everything's lined up, or whether it's a Navisworks model, you would have to find a model where everything's coordinated right, and someone would have to be tasked with making sure that it stays on that same coordinate system.
But I guess when I asked you about the measurements, my question was more like, let's say for submittals, when you have to produce a lot of like wall elevations for coordination with openings, showing all the MEP traits. So is that something that's possible, just to be able to cut multiple sections and measure those elevations?
Yes, so if you want to do that in a plan-like environment, like you see on the screen with the floor plan, you could do the same thing by just cutting sections in Revit, putting on a sheet, and exporting a sheet, and then it's going to be 1-to-1, and then you can measure those openings. Absolutely.
Yeah, except the problem is all the different trades are not using Revit, so the only model that you might have is a Navisworks model.
So
would it be possible to?
So if you want to, yeah, if you want to measure stuff inside of the viewer here, you would need an IFC model or a PDF sheet. If they're coming directly from Revit, it's all done automatically through the publishing process. If they're coming from something else, you would have to go into so for sheets, for example, you could say import, drag and drop the sheets, upload them. If they're not at the proper 1-to-1 scale, there is a process by which you can scale them to be 1-to-1. And I say give or take because you do it visually, and then you can measure them. Same thing with the IFCs. If you're getting IFCs from somewhere other than Revit, you can just drag and drop in the models as IFCs, and then you can view them. Those should be one-to-one as they come in play. But so to view it and to interact with it inside the web portal, it needs to be an IFC model or a PDF.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, Matthew asked about cost. That's usually the last question, the first and the last. But yes, guys, feel free. Oh, there, no. There I am.
Sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
It's like, whoa, that's a lot of me. Yeah, so that, it seems, concludes the day. I think, judging by the comments, people have enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Carl. This was very informative. Again, James Vanderzen came up with this idea, and as usual, his ideas are good ones. Other than that, normally at this point, I invite everybody out to the nearest bar. I would recommend you all go to your own fridge now. Other than that, thank you all for joining. I will see you at the next event, and with all the events that we're having these days, I'm actually getting the dates mixed up. So the next one is on July 20th. We're picking a Monday. We're jumping through the days of the week simply to give everybody a chance, right? If you're stuck with, take one do Thursday for your kid and we pick Thursday, you will never be able to make any of our meetings, right? So as we're jumping through the days of the week, the next iteration is Monday, July the 20th. Our own vice presidents will be presenting their startups and what they do with their startups and what it takes to run a startup these days in the BIM world. I'm looking forward to it. Bob, Ilkay, and Leonard are always good for a really in-depth and insightful discussion. So thank you, everybody, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.